Hi, my name's Dave and welcome back to 1 Acre in the Napa Valley. If the surroundings here look a little different than the last videos that you've seen me in, there's a good reason for that. I'm actually standing in the Yountville AVA. So if you take a look around, you can see that we are on the eastern side of the valley near the eastern hills. The reason for being here in the Yountville AVA and in this new vineyard site is we're going to be doing a new series of videos that will probably span over the next 4 to 5 years as we go through the development of this bare vineyard ground all the way through the planting, the harvesting, and making the wine. It's been probably about 2 years since my last video when we did the harvest in 2008 in the 1 acre down in the Oak Knoll district, and the wine turned out very well. So I got to thinking, wouldn't it be interesting to take cuttings from the 1 acre site in the Oak Knoll district here in the Napa Valley and take those and plant them in another growing region within the valley. And then that way, as the two wines were developed together, could really taste the differences in the appellations and the different characteristics that would follow because of that. And so that's why I decided to develop this vineyard here in the Oak Knoll district. Now, I've used the term AVA a couple of times. The acronym, or the initials AVA, stand for American Viticulture Area. All throughout the United States, where different types of vines are grown in different kinds of growing regions, there's a term or an application applied to those areas that's called American Viticultural Area, because each of the areas have different characteristics that they give the different flavors off into the fruit, into the wines. Now, the Napa Valley is an AVA into itself. It's an appellation itself. And inside of the Napa Valley, there's actually 15 different sub-appellations. Each of these have distinct characteristics that import these or imprint these upon the grapes that are grown upon there. Yountville is one of the 15 appellations, and so is the Oak Knoll district, where the other 1 acre is. So in developing this small acre here, we're going to use some of the same techniques as we did the 1 acre in the Oak Knoll district. They'll both be 1 acre-ish sites that we'll develop the wine from. Now, when we take a look here in the Yountville district, actually this is a point where the Yountville and the Stag's Leap districts come together. If we take a look off to what would be your right, you can see the ridge lines up in there. Those ridge lines are the Stag's Leap district. So where we find ourselves here is right where the Yountville and the Stag's Leap districts come together. This is the eastern hills of the Napa Valley that we're looking at. The 1 acre Oak Knoll vineyard that I have is about 4.5 miles or so, kind of to the north, rather to the south of here, kind of the southwest. And that vineyard is a little bit different. It sits up against the western hills, where this sits up against the eastern hills. So it's a very different microclimate and terrain here that will impart different kind of characteristics to the wine. Now, one of the things that is different, if we take a look down here, the soil is a little bit different in the Yountville district, especially as it gets up close to the Stag's Leap area. The soil here is much more volcanic in nature than where we are over in the Oak Knoll district. In the Oak Knolls district, it's more of an alluvial soil, but this is more volcanic in nature, kind of a sandy or a silty loam is what it really is. And there's a lot of rocks as kind of a gravelly soil as it gets up closer to the slopes of the hills. So that'll be just ideal for the planting of the vines. When I first saw this site, I was really excited about the prospects of being able to plant here because it's such a good location for grapevines, and a lot of famous wineries are very near to here. So when it comes to the actual layout of the vineyard, and that's what this first episode is about, we have to consider a couple of different things. Whenever you're going to lay a vineyard out, you need to decide what kind of row orientation that you're going to be using, what direction the rows go in, and also the spacing of the rows. So for here, gave it some thought. Row orientation can run in east-west or north-south or kind of variations of this. But here, just because of the way the sun tracks during the ripening season, I thought I would go with an east-west orientation. So if you look up the row that way, and you'll see a lot of plastic knives that I'll talk about in a minute, this is the way the rows are going to follow. And if you look, some of the rows up there in the lower portion of the Stag's Leap area are actually running in a very similar direction. These don't run truly east and west. West is probably, more this way, so this is probably about 20 degrees off. So still, it's an east and westerly row. This also duplicates what I did in the Oak Knoll district. So that's row orientation. The next thing to consider is spacing. How far apart should the vines be, and how far apart should the rows be? This is going to have a lot to do with the kind of equipment that's going to be used to maintain the vineyard after it's planted. Here, if I were using a tractor, they'd be a lot wider, but since I want to duplicate what we've done in the Oak Knoll district, I've planted the rows, or laid the rows out to be about 4 feet apart. So you can see as you look up that way, each one of these plastic knives is where the plants are going to go. And that's why these are so handy for laying out vineyards. You can get these in bulk. They come 500 at a time in a box. And what you can do to actually lay the vineyard out, what I've done, if you look down here, you can see that I've used just a long tape. It's a 200-foot long tape, and I'm going to pull it tight. You can probably see that it's attached to that fence all the way up at the other end. And what I've done is I lay the tape out just like this, and then of course I measure 4 feet wide at that end and 4 feet wide at the end that is behind you there a ways. And then I just take the plastic knives, I'll just walk up here a little bit, and find the spots where we've got 4-foot marks, like right there. And then just come down and set another 4-foot mark right in here, and then another one right in here. And each of these then represent where the vines will go. Not only do they represent where the vines will go, but they also represent periodically where I'll put vertical line posts and of course the growing stakes. Now something else I do to kind of help me keep the rows straight is I use another tape that runs perpendicular. This one here. So I've hooked that to the fence over on that side, and this way I can keep the line nice and straight as it runs across that way, and be able to keep the rows all nice and parallel as they go along. Now by doing this, what it allows you to do is lay the whole vineyard out like you can see here before you put a single post in, before you put any vines in at all, and then if there's any corrections that you need to make, then you can make the adjustments in. So that'll pretty much cover the first episode of Vineyard Layout. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish putting in the rest of the plastic knives, get that all laid out, and the next thing we'll be able to see is when I start putting the posts in, the vertical line posts, the end posts, and the different pencil stakes. Oh, and then in the next episode too, we'll probably go through some of the irrigation, how we'll actually run the piping through that. So until then, thanks very much for joining me here in my second 1 acre in the Yountville district of the Napa Valley.